So today we are going to learn how to make fabric covers for your A5 journal. And you probably can scale this however you want, but right now I just have the instructions for A5, and this was trial and error. I've just been seeing these kind of like cozy sweater journal covers for a while. And after seeing one recently on Instagram, I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to make me a couple for my journals. And so that's exactly what I did. I went to my local fabric store and I was like, where's your wool? I need some chunky wool. I saw the cream one. I fell in love with it. I saw this green wool coating fabric. I love that. Went to another fabric store and saw this kind of vintage floral pattern, fell in love with that too. And I wanted it chunky like a sweater. And even though the wool was thick, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and get me some batting. And so that is what I have. So grab some fabric, my friends, and let's get started. Okay. So in order to do this, I needed to cut out some patterns. That's just how I work so I can get some clean cuts. And you're going to cut out 9.5 by 14 for the piece that's going to span the cover of the books. Here, that was the folded flat piece. That's 9.5 by 8.5. And then for the flaps themselves, which is the way I'm doing it, is 4.25 by 9.5. And all of this will be in the description. And so for me, I'm just like testing out my template right now because I know I'm going to have like that main piece for the front and back, but I wanted the flaps actually to be a different color, the same color as the inside. And I also wanted the flap to have that batting in it because I wanted it to be cushy. So that's a preference thing. So you can choose to eliminate the batting if you want. I also got this basting adhesive that can be used for to adhere the batting to the wool if you're afraid that it might bunch up on you. Here, I'm just getting the rest of my sewing supplies, just some large scissors and some small scissors. And I am a novice, but I am a novice that always collects all the tools. So I look like I'm a professional, but I'm not a professional. My mom is. I'm not. And then I like that the tool that looks like a pizza cutter because it makes it a lot easier to cut the fabric, though you don't need that. You could just use the scissors if you wanted to. Okay, so I am cutting out the batting first. This is the 9.5 by 14 piece. This is the piece that's going to go between the interior and exterior piece. I am using a ruler just to try to get it as close as possible. Sometimes I don't use a ruler, I eyeball it. So it really just depends on how comfortable you are. All right, here I am cutting it out. First cut. All right, so now that I have this cut out, it's time to cut the lining. And I just love this fabric. It looks so good. But the lining is cut. Now for the exterior, I have to figure out if I want this chevron pattern to go vertically or horizontally when it goes across the book. I decided that I wanted it to go horizontally. And so I'm just making sure that when I cut out the pattern, it is going in the direction that I prefer. So I have that. I have my lining, and now I have the batting that will go in between the two. Yay. All right. Next, you need to cut out your flaps, your folded flaps, and you'll need to cut out, of course, 2 pieces. I'm just cleaning up here because I'm a little anal like that. All right, so let me cut out that second piece. Perfecto. And remember, it's going to end up being folded over. And then you're going to have the batting that's going to go inside of the fold. And so I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of the batting. First piece done. And the second piece done. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. So we have the batting for the folded flap that'll go inside like this. Let's think through how we are going to put it together. So I'm like, okay, that is the right side and the wrong side. So I have right side up, and right side is the pattern you actually want to see. The wrong side is the other side of the pattern. So I have the right side of the cover pattern up. I have the 2 flaps, and what I'm doing now is just putting the batting on the bottom of the cover, because I'm going to stick those 2 together later. And then I'm going to have the interior on the right side down. And I was just showing you, number one, I'm having a 4-inch hole on the bottom, which I'll talk about later. And if I wanted to do a bookmark, I could sew a little bookmark onto the cover. So when I turned it inside out, I would have a bookmark I could use in a journal, but I'm not doing that for this tutorial. A little disclaimer, I should have ironed the fabric before I cut it, because by ironing the fabric, I'm loosening it up and just totally messing up my measurements just a little bit. And some people actually sometimes wash their fabric beforehand, then iron it, then cut it. I really didn't have the patience for that. So, again, I am not teaching you good sewing habits. I'm just showing you the pattern and how to make this. So now I'm ironing the flap, and because I want that nice hard crease when I put it inside the book so I can look nice and professional. I'm ironing the batting that's going to go inside. And again, when I put the batting inside the flap, you'll see in a second, it sticks out just a little bit, but that is because I ironed it. And so it got just a smidgen bigger than the original cut, but that's fine. I'll just make sure that the cotton is lined up where it needs to be when I put everything together, and it'll come out fine. Okay, so now I have ironed the batting that'll go on the back of the cover. And remember, the batting is going to be adhered to the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm spraying the basting spray now, the temporary adhesive. This stuff is sticky and goes everywhere, so be careful where you spray it. And so I'm sticking the wrong side of the fabric onto it, and the right side of the fabric that I actually want to show up and use and see, is what you're seeing here. And so I'm just pushing it down, making sure there's no bubbles, and boom, there we have it. Now you could treat that as one piece. Now, what you're going to see me do here, I debated about cutting this, but I think it's really important, because if you don't get this part right, sometimes your covers can come out a little wacky, because this is the second cover I'm making. The third cover I made didn't quite end up right because I didn't do this part right. Make sure everything was lined up. And it threw everything off. And so what I'm doing now is I'm making sure that the edge of the fabric matches the edge of the cover fabric. I am also, like I was just pointing at the pattern because I'm making sure that the flowers are in the direction I want them to go. So as you're putting all your pieces together, you have to think through, once this is flipped inside out, how do you want everything to be lined up? What do you want to see when you open the book, when you close the book? You if and especially if you have patterns where it's noticeable if they're upside down, you really have to think through the order. So, like, even this, I'm making sure that it is going in the same direction as the flaps. And then I'm lining this up with the edges of the flaps and just making sure that everything is lined up as perfect as possible. So you see me tweaking here and there. It is just because I just want to make sure I have the edges just right. Perfection. All right. So now that I have everything lined up, it's time to clip or pin the sides. And remember, the bottom, I'm going to leave around 4 inches open because I'm going to need to turn this inside out, and I'll do a slip stitch to close it up. So I didn't have enough clips, so you'll see me using pins too, but I have everything pinned and it's now time to move on to the machine. Oh, one thing I almost forgot. Um, I am doing a 1/2 inch seam, and so I'm marking it with a marker. So when I get to the edges, I know where to turn. And so you see, I made that turn. Okay, that was super fast. And then now I'm closing it up. Bada bing, bada bam. Of course, I'm a super slow sewer. So I put this on like 20 speed. But as you see, everything looks good. It's coming together. Okay, so what you're going to do now is 2 things. The first thing is you're going to cut each edge at an angle. And what this does, it helps you to have nice, sharp, pointy edges. And some people use a chopstick once it's turned inside out in order to push the edges out to a perfect point. I just use my pinky. And some people also use there's like a little kind of edger I think you can use. So if you're having trouble, just use like a chopstick or something. So the second thing you're going to do after you cut the edges is you're going to cut off the batting and the wool as close to the edge as possible, so when you fold this over, all your edges aren't super bulky. Now, the cotton you can leave a little bit longer. It's fine. I think that's a technique called layering, and it kind of, by having it a little bit longer, it helps it look like more of a smooth edge. But the bulky stuff you definitely want to cut as close to the seam as possible without, of course, cutting the seam. Okay, now I am carefully pushing it through, trying not to rip anything. Push, 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 push. And then as I'm pushing it, you'll see that I'm just going to use my fingers to push out the edges. And again, some people use chopsticks. Some people have other tools that they use. I just use like my pinky finger or my regular finger, and that seemed to work fine. It got it to a point that I was comfortable with. And so I'm just slowly working the edges out, working the fabric out. And I realized, like, oops, the edge needs to be flipped. So I just flipped that because that's going to go on the inside of the book. And then I'm going to work slowly, working the edges, pushing it out. Slowly working the edges, pushing it out. Just trying to smooth everything as much as possible. Taking my time to do it so I don't undo any work that's been done. I'll iron this a little bit later to kind of flatten it out a little bit. There's just a little bit of a bulk on the edges, which I don't mind because even though I cut down as much as possible, it's still, a lot of fabric that I've sewn together. Now, before I close this up with a slip stitch, I'm just going to make sure that my book can actually fit into the sleeve, because if I needed to make any adjustments, I would have to flip it back over, like take out the stitches, which would be a nightmare. But that could happen if you get the measurements wrong. But luckily, everything worked out perfectly. Look at that. Look at that. And so I can stitch it up. Okay, so you're going to like fold it in to match the rest of the edges. And once you have it folded the way you want it, you're just going to use pins or clips in order to keep everything in place. Now, there are slip stitch videos. I am not a slip stitch queen. What you see me doing now is I went inside the fabric so the knot can't be seen. So the knot is kind of like on the inside because I kind of like went in. And then now I'm going to go back to the edge of the fabric, and I'm just going to go along the edge, maybe 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to just push that needle through. And then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing. Right on the edge, I'm going to push it in maybe 1/4 of an inch. And then once I push it in 1/4 of an inch, I'm just going to pull, just tug a little bit just to make sure everything is invisible. Because a slip stitch, if you do it right, you should not be able to see it when it's finished. There are a lot of videos where people show step-by-step directions on how to do this. So if you're not familiar with the slip stitch, I definitely recommend one of those videos. So I'm just going to finish this up, and I'm going to do a slip stitch along this little 4-inch gap to make sure that I have a good clean edge. Okay, and then at the end, when you get to the end, you're just going to create a little bit of a knot. And sometimes, depending on the color thread you use, you could kind of see the knot. But if you use a thread that goes with your fabric, you don't see the knot at all. So I've made a knot. I'm about to cut it. All right. And yes, I'm done. Okay, so I've ironed it. And this is moment of truth, people. Moment of truth. Slipping it in. Slipping it in. And then you see I put the elastic around the back, because if you don't, you'll feel the elastic kind of dangling in the back, and it'll bunch up. The elastic that is with the Leuchtturm journal, that's what I'm using, the A5 Leuchtturm. And it's a little big, just slightly big. That's probably because after I ironed it, the measurements were a little off, but it looks good. To me, it looks like an old sweater around my favorite journal. If you love this video and want to support this channel, I want to show you just really quick the planning calendar. It's for sale now at thepaperplanner.com, and it is an at a glance calendar printed on newsprint. I absolutely love it. You can mount it to the wall or you can keep it folded up, but it's just a good way to look at your year to find out what all you have going on. People use it for planning vacations, planning recipes, planning school stuff. So please check it out, thepaperplanner.com. And I love that you can fold it up because you can just throw it in your journal if you want to. Anyway, I also wanted to show you all the green journal cover I created too. I think it's super cute, and I was able to get a patch to go on it, an iron-on patch. I did have to glue the edges a little bit, but yeah, I think these turned out fabulous. And you can see I definitely have a color palette that I prefer. Let me know what you think.